Welcome to A World of Difference Embracing Neurodiversity. I'm Daryl Owens. In the golden age of television, fathers were portrayed as wise and dependable. Father knows best defined the era. Today, many TV dads are reduced to comic relief, reflecting a societal shift that too often sidelines dads in parenting. But here's the truth. Fathers play a vital role, especially when it comes to nurturing neurodivergent children, academically, socially, and emotionally. This episode explores the profound impact of fathers on their neurodivergent children. We'll meet a California dad whose son's autism diagnosis led him on a journey of self-discovery, transforming him into a devoted advocate. We'll also hear from national experts on the crucial role fathers play in supporting these children. And we'll introduce a remarkable difference maker, a Guinness World Record-holding triathlete who's redefining expectations for neurodivergent athletes. We'll begin with the Kim family and Ray's inspiring story of becoming the dad his son needs.
You're going back to jail.
Let's go to jail.
When he was born, we thought he was like any other newborn. We had already had our first daughter, and he had a really difficult time sleeping, so we just thought, as any parent thought, okay, maybe it's colic, maybe he just is hungry all the time, but eventually, probably by about age 1, we noticed that this the sleep interruptions and the disruptions and the difficulty to be consoled was more than just typical. He was diagnosed with sensory processing disorder around age 2, so they again recommended us to another specialist doctor, and that's when it was confirmed that he's on the autism spectrum. I wanted somebody else to take care of my kid. That's just an honest, ugly truth when I first got the diagnosis report. I realized that I had to be the one, personally as his dad, as a parent, that no one else is going to do this for me. And that meant I would have to actually study and make myself aware or more versed in what sensory processing disorder was, what autism is, what speech delay is, what the development of fine and gross motor skills was. I just felt scared. I just felt extremely inadequate because I thought, hey, I've never had any experience with raising a child with a special need. Am I fit to do this? I have no other option because I'm his dad. So those are some of the fears I had, insecurities of, am I going to be a good dad?
Let's just say in the beginning it wasn't easy. You know, he still have his sensory challenges, and my husband is learning how to be patient, walk with him. You know, taking him around, run around the gym area, you know, then we slowly shoot the basket, you know, slowly dribbling, slowly adjusting and regulating. So as I see Owen grow in his regulation, how he regulates himself, I also see my husband growing how to help him to make different steps that make him success.
After Owen was diagnosed, I didn't realize how much that was going to reverse my role as his dad, as a father. I always joke, but there's some painful truth behind it, that I always thought, hey, I'm first in the family because I have to provide and lead the family, and now I'm number 4. My whole life, my whole approach to life now has to pivot around what's going to set up my kids, especially Owen, to handle life. And so my role changed from, a term that I've always kind of thought about is I'm not just a dad, I'm a dadvocate. You know, I'm a dad who has to constantly advocate. It made me have to develop more emotional awareness personally in order to help him process and understand his own emotions through the struggles, through the meltdowns, through the rigidity in any transition. We really believe that the greatest priority we could put for our child right now in parenting and raising them is surrounding them with great relationships and friendships.
I love the fact that he, even though he has a lot of stuff to do, I like that he's made room for me to put me first instead of his work.
I realized that having a son with a diagnosis like autism is actually has been an incredible blessing in disguise. There's small victories, right? He hated riding bicycles or trying anything new. It was just too much stress, too much anxiety inducing for him. And so I remember teaching him how to ride a bike, and that was a long process. And the longest he could ride was maybe one block on a sidewalk, a small block. We're talking a very small block at the park. Now he loves biking. And I look, I'm thinking, wow, he really is into this. And you know what's crazy? I was like, why are you so into wanting to ride your bike? And he said, this is one of the most relaxing and calming things for me.
My son is almost 13. I would say my husband and him, they're best friends. If I didn't let my husband lead, I don't think we're where we're at, and seeing all the different miracles that we saw with Owen and the progress that he made.
It takes a village to raise our kids, and we would not be able to raise our kids, both my daughter and my son, and even manage the relationship and the balance, if it weren't for other parents that showed us the way, or that should give us some really helpful tips, like, hey, dads, why don't you have a special time with your daughter and then also a special time with your son? And what I learned was it went from being Owen having autism initially, and my negative response was I thought it was going to be a problem. And now it's become a door of so many possibilities.
Thank you for what you've done for me. I really appreciate it, even though sometimes I don't show it. But I just want to say I am thankful for you to be my dad.
Next, our experts explore the vital role fathers can play in supporting their neurodivergent children. Dr. Gilbert Franco is a licensed marriage and family therapist and assistant professor of psychology at Beacon College, America's first accredited baccalaureate institution for students with learning and attention issues. His prior experience includes serving as lead faculty area chair for psychology at the University of Phoenix, San Diego. Dr. Franco also served as clinical director for the McAllister Institute in El Cajon, where he supervised marriage and family therapy and clinical social work interns. His expertise blends academic instruction with practical clinical training and supervision. Dr. Jeffrey Gardere directs clinical training for Touro College's Doctorate of Psychology program and is associate professor at its School of Health Sciences and College of Osteopathic Medicine. A licensed and board-certified clinical psychologist in New York, he practices within integrated community healthcare. Dr. Gardere has authored multiple books, including Practical Parenting with Montel Williams. His first book, Smart Parenting for African Americans, has been praised for its guidance on raising African American children in today's world. Dr. Nahama Sorshur is a leading New York City specialist with 30 years of experience working with patients with neurocognitive challenges as an evaluator and psychodynamic therapist. She holds a PhD in clinical psychology from Adelphi University and a certificate in psychotherapy from New York University. Dr. Sorshur has published extensively on neurocognitive challenges, trauma, and neurodiverse children. Her latest books include Assessment and Intervention with Neurocognitive Challenges and Your Neurodiverse Child, How to Help Kids with Learning, Attention, and Neurocognitive Challenges Thrive, set for release in April 2025. And we're going to begin our conversation today with Dr. Franco. We often hear about the crucial role of mothers. Well, but why is it important to specifically address the father's role in raising a neurodivergent child?
Thank you. That's an excellent question, Daryl. So children, whether they're neurodivergent or not, learn primarily through their parents, through what we call social learning. Now, having the father, included in that gives a child a different perspective to learn from. If you have just one parent or the other, they just get an incomplete picture. But when you have both, you have a more complete picture of, what it's like to be an individual in society, basically.
All right, well, thank you. So, Dr. Goodare, what are some of the unique challenges that fathers of neurodivergent children face that may differ from the challenges their mothers face?
Sure. Well, Daryl, as you referenced earlier, one of the things we know is that much of the early maturation of a child comes from, in fact, the mother. Many of the developmental stages are based on that kind of a relationship. But when dads are introduced into the picture, and that's usually later on, that the baby learns some of the cues from the dad, preferential smiling towards the dad. That usually comes after the preferential smile towards the mom, that we see the father becomes more important in the picture. One of the things that we know about neurodiverse children is that when fathers are involved in that particular scenario, if they're not getting the feedback from their neurodiverse child with regard to the father showing love, showing emotion, touching the child, giving attention, and that neurodiverse child may not be giving that back at that point in their early life, that the father may then begin to mirror that same kind of behavior and begin to pull back. And that's why it's so important that we talk to fathers about that we talk to fathers about their importance in being in the lives of their neurotypical children, but especially in the lives of their neurodevelopmental children, and addressing some of those challenges, but really talking about how they can enhance the relationship within the family with their neurodiverse child.
All right, well, thank you. So, Dr. Sorsher, I'm wondering how societal expectations of masculinity can sometimes hinder fathers from fully engaging in the care and support of their neurodivergent children.
I really like that question. I think it's really great to include fathers into this conversation. In the last 20 years, there's been a real difference in how men see themselves and how fathers see themselves, and actually how we see neurodivergence. So we really want to support fathers in parenting their neurodivergent kids. And one thing that we expect as a society is that men are kind of fix-it people. And there's a stereotype that I think is still true, where the wife comes home and complains to her husband about the boss, and the husband goes, okay, let's figure out how to fix it. And the wife says, no, I just want to vent. And men are socially expected to fix things. When you have a neurodivergent child, you can't fix it. It isn't something to fix. It is something to help. It is something to celebrate. But you are on a different journey than if your child was neurotypical. So men have to be supported in understanding that, and also in being able to express the feelings that are associated with that, because as a society, we don't expect men to express the feelings. We think they need to be stoic, they shouldn't be crybabies, they need to be calm. And having a neurodivergent child, and Dr. Goodare mentioned this, the child doesn't act the way you would expect a child to act, and therefore you're going to have feelings about it. You might feel embarrassed, you might feel anxious about the child's future, you might feel angry, you might get depressed. And with all these feelings, we need to really support fathers in expressing their feelings and being able to then parent their child more comfortably. And finally, fathers are expected to bring home the bacon. They are financial providers. Having a special needs child is very expensive. So it becomes so much more stressful for them. And they also then have less time to spend with their child and less time to understand their child. So we really need to support fathers in being able to spend quality time with their children so they can really understand them and celebrate them and validate them.
Thank you, Dr. Sorsher. Good advice. So, Dr. Franco, let's get specific here. Can you talk about some of the ways that a father who's involved in the parenting of a neurodivergent child can positively impact their development?
Yeah, really good question, Daryl. So one of the things that a father's presence can positively impact the child is through their sense of self-efficacy. In other words, their belief in their ability to do something. Now, unfortunately, there hasn't been as much research on the father role perspective as there has been the mother role with regards to this. But there has been some recent research that's been picking up steam in that impact of fathers, and the research has shown or has suggested that there is a positive relationship between a father's involvement in a child's life and their sense of self-worth, their sense of their ability to to learn, their sense of even their self-esteem in general. Now, specifically, a father can help by being first being present and available for the child. Again, children really yearn for their parents' attention, whether it's their mother's attention, their father's attention, whatever presence there parent is there, they yearn for that attention. So that's that first step, right? Well, the second step is to not just be present, but actually listen to what the child is experiencing. And then third, provide some positive reinforcement, positive feedback towards how the child is communicating, so you can further build that sense of self-worth. Again, a child needs building blocks in order to build their sense of self-worth. You can't build something without anything, right? So by providing that positive feedback, you're giving the child a sense of, okay, I'm doing this right. I want to do more of this, and again, that can help a child through that.
So, Dr. Guider, are there any misconceptions about how fathers might have difficulty connecting with neurodivergent children, particularly those with communication issues?
Well, as I said earlier, Daryl, I think there are some real issues as far as connecting. And I think Dr. Franco and certainly Dr. Sorsher hit upon the fact that, dads are out there, bringing home the bacon, and they feel that's really what their role is, though we know that mom brings home the bacon and brings home the sausage and the eggs and, has all these different roles. But that is not a misconception that dad may not be in the house so much. We tend to see that even with neurotypical children. But I think what the misconception is that fathers don't eventually warm up to their neurodivergent child, that they remain distant. And from the many families that I've been blessed to work with who have neurodivergent children, that the fathers in their own way are present. As the child begins to get older, as the father begins to acclimate themselves to the reality that they have a special needs child, and a child which is an extraordinary child and who needs a different type of attention, I've seen these dads really get into the situation and be there for their children. One of the things that I think I'd like to see them do more is be more physically active with their children. Instead of spending so much time working outside of the house, dedicating, if they can, some more time to their neurodivergent child as far as showing them physical love. And that's something that we don't see enough of and need to see more of. So I would say the major misconception that we really are addressing is that the father is outside of the relationship, is distant from their neurodivergent child. But really, the bottom line is that dads do their thing in their own way, and it's really important that they do stay involved as much as possible and show as much physical as well as emotional love to their children. But this common misconception that they're not involved is really a fallacy. They are very involved.
Watch the full Ask the Expert segment on our website at awodtv.org if you want to learn more about this topic. You can also watch or listen on Facebook, YouTube, or on your favorite podcasting platform. Next, let's meet our latest difference maker. As Sam Holness waits for the starter's gun to sound, he isn't just racing for the finish line. He's racing to redefine expectations. As the first openly autistic athlete to complete a full Ironman and a Guinness World Record holder, Holness is a force in endurance sports and a champion for neurodiversity. With every mile and stroke, he's proven that neurodivergence is no limit to greatness.
People with autism don't usually take part in triathlons. Because autistic people do other sports such as football, track running, or cricket. It's like I'm invincible. When I was a kid, it wasn't easy. I got emotional. I was non-verbal. It's like my words couldn't come out. In sports, I can be faster and skilled triathlete with autism.
You know, Sam is out here competing against neurotypical athletes every day, and he's smashing it. He's in the top 10 percentile worldwide. To be an ultra-elite, he needs to get into the top 5%. But I look at his results for races, and he's beating athletes in his own age group who don't have a neurodivergent disability. He is starting to learn the euphoria behind winning. And that came last year when he finished the London Marathon in under 3 hours. So it was 2 hours, 57 minutes, 33 seconds. And I'm a coach, and I'm a dad. And in terms of what he did, it was one of the most thrilling days in my coaching career to see him do it. And the joy that was on his face for actually achieving it.
That's an endurance sport because it's swim, cycle, and run. Half Ironman, the 1.9k swim, 9k cycle, and a half marathon. And then Ironman's a double, the big one, the 3.8k swim, 180 cycle, and a marathon. I'm more of a swimmer. It doesn't matter if the temperature is cold or warm, pool or open water. I just enjoy it. I did remember when I was 3 years old when I swam through that deep end without armbands. I had to ride a bike when I was 14. And so here I'm 40.
One parent said to us once, "Why do you let Sam swim? Aren't you afraid that he'll drown?" And our answer is that, well, if he can't swim, he definitely will drown. So, you know, swimming's important. And I think probably when he started secondary school, 11 or so, we decided on finding his gift. Because if you can find a gift for any child, it doesn't matter if they're neurodivergent, neurotypical, it's something that all parents should do. When you find that gift, you nurture it. You know, I treat it like a prize orchid, you know, that's rare and has special qualities. If you look after it every day, if you talk to it, if you feed it, you give it the right environment to thrive, you will get a beautiful flower from it. And that's what Sam's become. You know, here's an autistic young man who has sensory issues, and we sent him to swim in the Pacific Ocean for 3.8 kilometers. And my understanding is there's turtles, jellyfish, parrotfish, all sorts of things underneath there, but he did it. And then we sent him out on his bike to swim 180 kilometers, 90 kilometers, 90 kilometers back. And then he finished that and he ran a marathon. He has skills and gifts that I would never have. It's these things that we call challenges that have transformed into his strengths. And there's a balance in life. You know, one man's weakness is another man's strength. What sport is about is repeat, master. Probably 95% of the athletes I speak to, and I say, so, would you go on a turbo trainer for 4 hours? Oh, no, God, I gotta go outside, it's so boring. Or the rower for an hour and a half, oh, God, I can't do that, it's so boring. The other thing about Sam, and I compare him to neurotypical athletes, you know, this guy goes on the turbo trainer for 5 hours, or then he'd do a rower for 20K. He liked judo because the structure of judo, he'd get a white belt, a yellow belt, and so on. And he's actually a brown belt in judo now. The reason he liked it is because it's structured and repetitive, but he also liked rewards. It's just like how he does, you know, triathlons or 10K runs. He loves the medal.
I prefer longer distance running than short distances because I enjoy doing repetitive workouts, long workouts. Doesn't matter if it's a 5K swim or a half marathon on treadmill. I normally swim 5,000 meters through the indoor pool and normally cycle for 4 hours on indoor cycle. And the longer the distance, the more focus I get. And I focus those long repetitive workouts without worry. If I don't get bored, I just leave the house and do some exercise.
There are lots of athletes like Sam who are fairly special, fairly unique sorts of athletes. Sam has a diagnosis of autism, but he has an IQ greater than 75. And that barrier of an IQ greater than 75 prevents him from participating in the Special Olympics. He can't go to the Paralympics. So one of the things that I'm doing as a personal mission is I write to the IOC, the IPC, I write to everybody requesting that the rules are changed to allow athletes like Sam to compete. For a particular category to be set up for athletes like Sam that have an IQ greater than 75 and have proven ability. I get a DM every day from a parent out there who's just saying, I've seen Sam's video, I've heard about it, so I'm read about Sam, and it's so inspirational. You guys have given us hope.
With this autism, it would be my superpower. It's in not only builds up my confidence. With that superpower, it doesn't stop me from taking part in sports. I just keep going to the end without quitting. Don't let your autism stop you from taking part in sports. Just get out there and do it.
Congratulations, Sam Holness, for making a difference. And that does it for this episode of A World of Difference, Embracing Neurodiversity. I'm Daryl Owens. See you here next time. You can watch episodes of A World of Difference on the Beacon College Facebook and YouTube channels and on the show's website, awodtv.org. The website also provides tip sheets and other resources for your parenting journey. You can watch the show from the PBS app available on your favorite streaming device, and you can listen on your favorite podcasting platform. Thank you for watching and supporting A World of Difference.